My name is Rowan Keats. I'm 72, and this story begins on a Tuesday morning with a knock at my front door and the hum of a silver SUV idling in the driveway. Bellhaven was quiet that day, blue skies, trimmed lawns, no wind. A perfect kind of silence, the kind that's easy to hear when it's about to be broken. I had just come back from my morning walk. Same loop I do every day, down to the waterfront past the flagpole back up to the house with the maple that splits at the base. I had a fresh pot of coffee on the counter, mug still warm in my hand when my son Colby and his wife Renata stepped into the front hall like they owned the place. Just for a few weeks, Dad Colby said, kissing me on the cheek, "You'll hardly notice us." They brought 6 suitcases and a golden retriever. Renata's mother called twice within the hour to check whether the guest towels had been washed in hypoallergenic detergent. I hadn't even asked what room they were planning to stay in. I didn't have to. By that evening, they had moved into the master suite. My wife's shawl was folded into a laundry basket outside the door. Her cedar jewelry box was missing from the dresser. I found it in the hallway under a pair of yoga blocks. Nothing was broken, nothing was said, just moved. I was reassigned politely to the downstairs den for my knees. Never mind that I hike every weekend. We just worry, Renata had said with that stiff smile she saves for the help. I didn't protest, I nodded. I observed. Next morning, I got an alert on my Ring camera. 8:13 a.m., Colby carrying a crate my records from the living room to the garage. At 9:42 that night, Renata pulled down 3 framed photographs from the fireplace mantel. Our wedding. Our boys when they were still sweet. Her excuse decluttering. Said it like it was a compliment. Again, I said nothing. I backed up the footage and saved it to my iCloud. I keep a thumb drive in my sock drawer in case things need to be remembered later. 2 days later, I overheard them talking about a graduation party for my granddaughter Lila. "We'll have it here," Renata said. "Plenty of space. Great lighting for photos. Just need to spruce it up a bit, paint maybe some new patio chairs." I heard her say, "spruce it up," as she tossed my wife's antique pillows into a garbage bag. They didn't ask me about hosting the party. They told me. They ordered a tent, 36 round tables, and a string quartet from some agency in New Haven. There was a cake tasting in the living room. A florist tour in the backyard. All under my roof. I had hosted dozens of family events in that house over the years. Birthdays, wakes, holidays, but not like this. This wasn't family. This was an occupation. 3 days before the party, I got another notification. This time it wasn't the Ring camera. It was a bank alert. Wire pending $17,800. Carriage House Catering. Drawn from the household account. The one with my name on it. The account tied to Keats Harbor LLC, a holding structure I quietly set up after my wife passed. I own 51% of the house through it. Not because I don't trust my children, but because I've worked in insurance for 35 years. I know what happens when people get comfortable. And Colby had gotten very comfortable. He always had a taste for shortcuts. He borrowed $5,000 for a business that never launched, then $10,000 for fertility treatments. Then just another small thing he said after he wrecked a leased car on a ski trip. I didn't keep a tally to punish him. I kept it because I knew one day I might need to recall the balance. That night I opened a fresh manila folder, labeled it Harbor House. I printed the wire alert. I clipped it to the Ring photos, the catering contract Renata left on the counter, and the HOA notice I had just received $38 for overnight parking violations, probably one of their friends. It was a small number, but small numbers have weight when they pile up. Later I opened a new email. Lila had forwarded something quietly and only to me. It was a screenshot from the family group chat. Renata had written, "Once the POA is done, everything's easier. My parents can move into the master. We'll get him set up at Pinecrest. He'll like it, it's quiet." That's how they spoke of me now, like I was a vase to be packed and labeled. Lila, bless her, wrote nothing in the thread, just took the screenshot and sent it with a note, "Thought you should see." I responded with a thumbs up emoji. No words. I sat at the kitchen table for another half hour, staring out at the garden. That hydrangea bush still bloomed every spring, even though no one had watered it in weeks. I made a note to tend to it tomorrow. Then I did what Colby and Renata never expected me to do. I picked up the phone and called my attorney. The next morning I trimmed the rose bushes out front. It's something I still enjoy, gives the hands something to do while the mind sets itself straight. I thought better with shears in my hand than I ever did with a spreadsheet. By the time I came back inside, the house smelled like eucalyptus and lavender. Renata had replaced my soap, said it was spa-inspired. The old bar orange dial was gone from the dish. That's how these things go. No one kicks you out with a hammer. They do it with smiles and substitutions. While I was pouring my second cup of coffee, my phone buzzed again. Wire completed $17,800 Carriage House Catering. I took a long sip. The account was still mine legally, practically entirely. Colby had access, sure, but only because I'd once trusted him with the login to help pay utility bills while I was out recovering from surgery. That was 3 years ago. The password hadn't changed. That was on me. But the wire, that was on them. I printed the receipt and added it to the Harbor House folder. Slipped it behind the HOA fine, $38 for a parked vehicle crossing the curb line. Not a big deal unless you've spent enough years watching small leaks become floods. Later that afternoon, while Renata was staging the dining room for some mock-up photos moved, the chairs cleared the table of every picture frame Lila passed me in the hallway. Her steps slowed just enough to slip me a folded note. It wasn't a note exactly. It was a screenshot. A group text. Renata again. Once he signs the full POA, it's smooth sailing. I told my mom she can have the master after the party. Pinecrest has vacancy in the East Wing. Another text from Colby a few lines below. We'll get him to sign something soon. He gets confused after dinner. Wait for that window. That was the first moment I felt it. Not just the intrusion, but the plan. I wasn't being visited. I was being extracted. Still, I didn't yell. I nodded politely when Renata walked by holding a silver serving tray as if rehearsing for guests. I even complimented her blouse. It had little cranes on it. But I called my attorney again that evening and moved up the appointment. That night I found another breadcrumb. Colby had left his email open on the shared kitchen tablet, probably too comfortable, too sure I wouldn't pry. But I did. I clicked once. There it was. Hey Dean, any way to do a quitclaim deed without Dad needing to be in person? Could we argue mental decline? He keeps repeating the same joke about the sprinkler timer. I took a screenshot, printed it, folder. I also turned on two-step authentication for every account I had. The next morning I went for my walk later than usual. When I returned, Colby was on the back patio FaceTiming with someone. I couldn't hear much, but I heard him say, "We're close." He doesn't know about the deed structure. He just calls it the house. He was right. I did just call it the house. But that house had been inside a limited liability company since the year after my wife died. I built it that way for a reason. I didn't want probate. I didn't want mess. I didn't want court dates where my name was spoken like a case number. The company Keats Harbor LLC was simple. 2 members. I held 51%. Colby had the rest in name only. The operating agreement said as much. No changes could be made without my approval, not unless I was medically unfit or declared legally incapacitated by 2 doctors. Which I wasn't. I took a quiet moment in my den, my new suite, as Renata called it, and looked through everything. Ring footage from the garage. Catering and voice. HOA notice. Screenshot of the group chat. Colby's email about the quitclaim. And now a copy of my LLC's original operating agreement. I ran my hand along the folder. Smooth, clean, organized. They thought I was slipping. But I've never been sharper. It wasn't just about the house. It was about what the house represented. Every inch of that place held my wife's handprint. Every creaking floorboard remembered our boys running in socks. The little indent in the window seat, my wife used to sit there every morning with her tea. They weren't decluttering a house. They were erasing a life. That evening I made 2 decisions. 1, I would cancel the conditional power of attorney I had granted to Colby 2 summers ago when I was in the hospital after my hip replacement. That POA had been dormant only to be activated under medical necessity, but it existed, and that was enough to be dangerous in the wrong hands. And 2, I would rewrite my will. Not to punish. To protect. I wouldn't be leaving the house to my son. I would be converting my stake into a codicil, splitting the educational trust evenly between Lila and her brother. And as for the property itself, I'd be giving myself the right to reside in a guest cottage on the premises for life should the LLC ownership ever change. And that change? It was coming sooner than they thought. There's a strange calm that settles in once a decision is made. Not the kind you feel on vacation or after a glass of something warm, but the sort that slips in quietly when you've accepted what needs to be done. It's the stillness before a clean cut. I arrived at my attorney's office just after 11 the next morning. A small firm tucked between a florist and an old bank building in downtown Greenwich. I'd worked with Walter Beck since 1999, back when contracts were printed on carbon triplicates, and every third handshake still meant something. Walter's receptionist handed me a mug of coffee and nodded like she already knew. Walter didn't waste time with pleasantries. He just looked over his glasses and said, "You're ready to fix this." I was. We began with the power of attorney, the one I had signed during rehab 2 summers ago more out of convenience than caution. Back then I'd needed help with prescription refills, hospital forms, and some household bills. I'd signed a conditional POA triggered only upon medical incapacity. Colby hadn't misused it yet, but Renata's texts made it clear they were preparing to test that boundary. "He gets confused after dinner," she had written, as if a man who forgets a joke now and then should be stripped of his life's ledger. Walter arranged for a full capacity evaluation with a geriatric psychiatrist at the local clinic. Standard procedure. I passed every segment with ease. Math, memory, logic, recall. Even a question about presidential succession. The doctor signed off on my full capacity in writing 2 copies notarized. That same afternoon, Walter filed to revoke the POA. A new document was drafted explicitly stating that no power of attorney shall be active or valid without my physical consent in the presence of legal counsel. That one was signed, stamped, and filed in triplicate. One for my folder, one for his, one stored in the safe. Next came the will. I already had one. But times change. Intentions harden. I had Walter add a codicil, a formal amendment redirecting my estate. The house as it existed under Keats Harbor LLC would not pass to Colby. Instead, I created an educational trust for Lila and her brother. Equal shares, no conditions, no performance clauses, just support should they choose to pursue something beyond themselves. And if the house were ever sold, I reserved the right within the codicil to reside permanently in any secondary structure on the property, a guest cottage apartment or auxiliary unit, until the end of my natural life. No rent, no revocation, no compromise. Walter raised an eyebrow at that clause. "You planning to sell?" I said nothing. Then I asked him to pull the county clerk and land registry records for Keats Harbor LLC just to be safe. I wanted confirmation that there were no liens, no encumbrances, no quiet attempts to leverage equity behind my back. The search came back clean, just as I'd kept it. Next, I asked Walter a quiet question. What if I wanted to transfer majority control to a third party, someone not in the family? He looked at me for a moment. "You mean to a buyer?" I nodded. He tilted his head. "Then you're free to do so. You control 51% of the LLC. You have full discretion. You'll just need to notify the county, sign the deed, and clear the escrow terms with the other member." That would be Colby. But Colby, in his confidence or laziness, had never added his signature to the operating resolution. The file Walter pulled showed a missing amendment. No signatures beyond mine. Legally speaking, I had full control. All I needed was a buyer. Walter made a call. Quite quick professional. "I know someone," he said, scribbling a name. "He's low profile. Sold a resort chain last year. Wants something quiet near the water. Keeps to himself. His name's Harrison Vale." We set a meeting for Friday morning. Walter prepared a seller's packet, included a property overview, limited liability company structure, summary escrow instructions, and a blank wire receipt form for the deposit should the offer be accepted. I left his office with a folder twice as thick as the one I'd brought in. Outside, the wind had picked up. Fall always arrived early in Connecticut. Leaves had started to loosen at the edges of the trees, even though the sun was still warm. When I got home, Renata was on the phone, probably finalizing the music schedule. I heard her say acoustic set during desserts. Colby was fiddling with the outdoor lighting, arguing with the event planner about string bulb placement. Neither of them noticed the envelope I carried. That evening, I walked to the guest bathroom, one they rarely used, and opened the cabinet. Behind the towels was a small, fireproof box. I placed the folder inside, locked it, pocketed the key. Then I booked a mobile notary service for Sunday at 2 p.m., the exact hour the party was scheduled to begin. I also called the event caterer, told them to note the account had changed hands. That final payment would require a second authorization on site. They asked if I wanted to cancel. "No," I said, "just prepare for a minor adjustment." I slept better that night than I had in weeks. And in the morning I scheduled one more appointment with a local contractor to design a guest cottage. Nothing extravagant, just a small space, one floor facing the water. A place to read, to write, to outlive the noise. Friday morning arrived with a low sky, and the smell of salt water riding the breeze in from Long Island Sound. I shaved, buttoned a clean shirt, and poured a single cup of coffee. 1. That's all you need on a day that might change the balance of your life. The kitchen table was cleared, no flyers, no wedding magazines, no scattered bills. Just a folder with documents that now governed my half-century of work and memory. I sat down and waited. At 10 o'clock sharp, Harrison Vale knocked at the side door. He was younger than I'd imagined, maybe mid-50s, sharp blazer, old-fashioned wristwatch, no assistant. His eyes scanned the front room quickly, but he didn't linger like a man shopping for lifestyle. He moved like a man evaluating logistics. That was a good sign. We sat by the window where the glass looked out on the yard that used to hold my son's swing set. "I'm not looking for a second home," Harrison said plainly. "I'm looking for a last one." I liked that. He had sold off a string of wellness resorts in the Midwest, he told me, after the business got too noisy. Said he wanted trees, water, and a place to hear himself think. "I'm not here to lowball you," he added, flipping through the company packet Walter had put together. "You've structured this well. Very clean. LLC, with transferable equity, no lien, no probate traps. And the house solid bones. You've maintained it." I nodded but didn't smile. He turned to the final page of the deed summary and looked up. "I'd be willing to offer 15% above current market," he said, "on one condition." "What's that?" I asked. "You stay," he said. "I build you a guest cottage on the east side of the yard, facing the water. Your footprint, your preferences. You live there as long as you want. Lifetime occupancy. In writing." That was the moment I knew he understood me, not just the asset, but the reason I was selling it in the first place. He wasn't buying the house. He was removing a burden. We shook hands. The paperwork moved quickly. Walter had anticipated my intentions and everything had already been prepped. I signed the transfer of majority control for Keats Harbor LLC that same afternoon. Harrison wired the escrow deposit by close of business confirmation, would arrive the next morning. The total value of the transaction, $2,700,000. More than I ever expected. More than Colby ever imagined. Walter and I arranged for the county clerk's office to log the ownership change immediately. I received the certified copy by courier. I placed it in the fireproof box beside the revocation of the POA and the new codicil to my will. The final piece. I called the event caterer, gave them my name, and said I'm calling to confirm that final payment must be held in escrow until after 2 p.m. on Sunday, pending my in-person approval. The woman on the line hesitated. "Sir, this was booked by a different household member." "I'm the majority owner of the property," I said flatly, "and the event is under my roof." She said she'd add a note. I asked her to double-space it. Saturday passed quietly. Renata was rehearsing her toast in front of the mirror. Colby spent most of the day in his laptop, possibly finalizing guest lists or researching assisted living facilities. No one mentioned the POA. No one brought up the account. Lila didn't say anything either, but she left a sticky note on my door that read, "I like your quiet better than their noise." Sunday morning, the lawn crew came early, chairs, lights, linens. A balloon arch was taped over the porch railing. Classical music played from a Bluetooth speaker in the guest bath. I wore my navy blazer, the one I saved for weddings, funerals, and other declarations of formality. I polished my shoes, folded a handkerchief, and placed the certified documents in a brown envelope, the kind with a string clasp. At 1:50 p.m., the mobile notary arrived, parked discreetly in a gray Subaru. I met her at the side gate, showed her the documents, and confirmed the timeline. She nodded. "You want me inside?" "Yes," I said. "At 2 sharp, no earlier." Inside, Renata was arranging floral centerpieces like a queen preparing for a televised coronation. Colby adjusted a Bluetooth mic clipped to his lapel. The caterer's point-of-sale terminal was set up near the kitchen door. The young server there tapped the screen, paused, and looked over. "Excuse me, sir," he said to Colby. "There's a payment freeze here. It says, approval required from Rowan Keats." Colby blinked. "From who?" I stepped forward. "From me." He turned. "Dad," he said, then forced a laugh. "There's some kind of glitch with the credit system. Can you come approve the final gratuity?" "After we take care of something else," I said, holding up the envelope. Renata drifted in from the hall. "Rowan, we're about to start the speech. Can this wait?" "No," I said. "It starts now." I motioned to the notary, who stepped inside and took her place at the kitchen island. This, I continued, is a county clerk certified transfer of LLC ownership. As of Friday, I no longer hold majority stake in Keats Harbor LLC. That now belongs to Mr. Harrison Vale, who is standing just outside. I paused, then added, "This also includes a 30-day notice to vacate. You will need to relocate by then." Silence spread across the room like fog. Renata's face drained of color. "You're selling the house." "I'm selling the burden," I said, "and keeping the peace." Colby stammered. "You can't just what about the POA? What about your mental state?" The notary slid a document across the counter. "This is a revocation of power of attorney. Signed, witnessed, and certified. Full mental capacity confirmed by Dr. Amelia Brandt, board certified." I looked at Colby and said, "That means you no longer speak for me." Then I turned to the caterer. "As for the payment," I said, "you'll receive confirmation once Mr. Vale decides whether the party proceeds under his roof." The young man blinked. "So, do I keep the food hot?" I smiled. "Best to hold it at room temp for now." Renata opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Lila walked over, stood beside me, and took my hand. Outside, I heard the wind shift just enough to rustle the top of the hedge, 2 p.m. sharp. A quartet of violins had just begun tuning up near the pergola. Guests were drifting through the backyard, plastic champagne flutes in hand, snapping pictures beside a white lattice arch Renata had ordered from some overpriced boutique in Westport. Everything looked polished, manufactured, sterile. Except for the people running it. I stood just inside the French doors, hands behind my back envelope tucked under one arm. My blazer was pressed. My shoes were shined. The same navy blue pair I wore at Colby's baptism, and again at my wife's memorial. A few feet away, Renata was giving directions to a teenager in a tuxedo shirt holding a tray of deviled eggs. "Smile more," she said. "You're part of the experience." Colby paced by the buffet table, pulling at his collar. "Where's the speaker for my toast?" he barked at no one in particular. The POS tablet chirped from the kitchen counter, one sharp tone that stopped the motion in the room. A staffer leaned in, tapped a few keys, then turned to Renata. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," he said. "The final payment is frozen. It says, escrow held, pending owner approval." Renata blinked. There must be some mistake. The boy shrugged. "It won't let me proceed." Then she saw me. I stepped forward and laid the brown envelope flat on the counter. "No mistake," I said. "I'm the one who froze it." Colby spun around. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" "What I should have done weeks ago." I opened the envelope and pulled out the county clerk's certificate, holding it at chest height so both of them could see. "This document confirms that Keats Harbor LLC has officially transferred majority control," I said. "As of Friday, I no longer own this property outright." I paused. "But I do retain lifetime occupancy rights. And under the terms of the escrow, no further event expenses may be charged to the estate unless approved in person by me." Renata forced a laugh. "Rowan, you can't just... This is Lila's day. There are guests arriving, food being served." "I'm aware," I said, "and if the new owner permits it, the party may continue." A hush settled over the kitchen. The violinists outside plucked a few awkward notes, waiting for a cue that wouldn't come. I gestured toward the front walkway. Harrison Vale entered. He wore no tie. His jacket was soft tweed. The kind of man who commands without speaking too loud. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm the new majority stakeholder in Keats Harbor LLC." He extended a hand to the caterer. "I'll be reviewing the grounds in about 20 minutes. Please hold all service until then." The server nodded wide-eyed. Renata's face had gone pale. Colby looked like he'd swallowed his own tongue. I turned to the mobile notary, who had entered quietly and was standing near the pantry. "Would you mind confirming the document?" She stepped forward, opened her folder, and presented the revocation of power of attorney stamped and sealed. "This document confirms that Mr. Rowan Keats has revoked all prior POA authority," she said. "His capacity has been verified by a licensed neuropsychiatrist. Certification is attached." Colby took a breath. You can't do this." I looked him straight in the eye. "I just did." He laughed, high-pitched and nervous. "You're old. You're confused. This won't hold up. We'll challenge it." Walter, my attorney, stepped in from the sunroom. "I'd recommend against that," he said, calm as a breeze. "We have documentation, emails, screenshots, ring video footage, even bank alerts. Every step of your attempt to coerce this man into surrendering control has been recorded." Colby blinked. That's illegal spying. Walter arched an eyebrow. It's his home, his camera, his accounts. Nothing unlawful about a man monitoring what goes on under his roof. Renata stammered, but the party, the guests. I pointed to the notice of 30-day eviction. You have time. 30 days. Use it to pack. Lila walked in from the side yard, still in her graduation gown. She saw the scene, the papers, the posture of it all. And then she smiled. Just slightly. Renata turned on her. Do something. Tell him this is crazy. Lila didn't move. Instead, she walked over to the POS tablet and tapped the screen. Gratuity line still blank, she said to the server. I reached into my jacket and pulled out 3 crisp $20 bills. This is for you, I told the young man. You've handled this with grace. $3 for every time you were asked to fix someone else's mistake. He took the bills stunned. Outside, a gust of wind tugged at the white linens. One of the paper lanterns caught in a tree and stuck there like a warning. Colby stared at the documents, then at me. I thought you loved this place. I do, I said. That's why I protected it. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Stop, I said. Before you say something that adds to the pile of regret you'll carry out of here. I stepped aside, letting the notary and caterer pass. Renata turned to Harrison, voice trembling. Are you canceling the party? He looked around, calm and measured. No, he said, but it's no longer your party. And just like that, the music resumed. Not louder, but clearer. Colby didn't storm off. That would have taken clarity. Instead, he stood in the corner of my kitchen, holding his phone like it might grant him a second opinion. But phones can't fix paper trails. And that's all I'd brought with me, paper and proof. Renata, on the other hand, hadn't given up the illusion of control. She adjusted her pearl earrings, smoothed her blouse, and called out to the guests, just a small mix-up with the billing. Everything is fine. It wasn't fine. And soon it would be public. Walter stepped forward again, calm, dry, no hint of gloating. Before anyone suggests legal action, let's be clear. We have documentation of every step taken to manipulate Mr. Keats's legal and financial standing. Including, he said, holding up his own folder, a group chat screenshot where Renata writes, and I quote, Once the POA is done, everything's easier. My parents can move into the master. Someone near the entryway gasped. Walter continued flipping a page. We also have an email from Mr. Colby Keats to an attorney inquiring about a quitclaim deed without the principal's knowledge. He turned again. And for good measure, we have ring video footage. Multiple clips, actually. One showing Mr. Keats's belongings being removed without consent. Renata shook her head. You're twisting everything. It was just decluttering. No, I said. It was erasure. Colby finally spoke. You still could have come to me. We're family. You came to me, I said, through bank wires and backdoor plans. At that moment, Lila walked in again. This time she had her phone in hand. Her eyes didn't leave Renata's face. I was in the group chat, she said. I saw everything. You misunderstood, Renata snapped. I know what I read, Lila replied, and I know what Grandpa deserves. She walked over and handed me her phone. On the screen was a viral post on Nextdoor already gathering comments. The title read, Elderly neighbor saves home from quiet eviction attempt calls notary during family party. Absolute legend. It had a picture of Harrison at the side gate, one of the notary's stamp, and another clearly from someone across the hedge of me handing over the envelope. 500 likes already, Lila said. Guess people love a twist. I chuckled. Sometimes silence makes a louder sound than shouting ever could. Meanwhile, outside the music had resumed tame uncertain. The servers moved about cautiously, not quite sure whose instructions to follow. Harrison returned from his tour of the backyard, nodded toward the caterer and said, Proceed with food service. But cut the music in 30. I'll be meeting with the vendors at 3. The caterer's team unfroze the kitchen terminal, and the event resumed under new management. I walked toward the patio, letting the late sun hit my face for the first time that day. Guests nodded politely, some with questions in their eyes, others with barely concealed delight at the family drama playing out between canapé trays. One man whispered, Good for you. Another woman said, My brother tried to pull something similar on our mother. You handled it right. That meant more than I expected. Back near the bar, Walter was briefing Harrison about the HOA violations, $38 for party prep noise, before permitted hours, and an unapproved banner tied to a tree. Renata tried to laugh it off. Harrison didn't. He simply said, "You'll want to remove that banner, or I'll have to report it myself." Then he looked at Colby. "And by the way," Harrison said, "you have 30 calendar days to vacate. I don't extend." Renata's voice wavered. "Where are we supposed to go?" Harrison blinked. "Anywhere else." There it was again, that quiet power. Not shouted, not performed, just done. I excused myself from the crowd and headed inside. Lila followed. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." She hesitated. "Why didn't you just kick them out earlier?" I thought about it. "Because I wanted them to reveal who they were first," I said. "Not just for me, but for you." She nodded. "That makes sense." I pulled a small envelope from my inside pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a copy of the educational trust paperwork signed and notarized, her name on the top line, her brother's on the next. "What is this?" she asked. "A clean start," I said. "For when you're ready." She hugged me, not politely but tightly, the way a granddaughter hugs the last honest person in a room full of polite thieves. We stood like that for a while. Then I whispered, "Go, enjoy your party, kid. You earned it more than they did." She smiled and slipped away. I stayed by the sliding door watching as one generation slowly reassembled their stories and another walked off into the future carrying their own name on a trust they didn't have to steal. By Monday morning, the graduation banner had been pulled down. The catering van was gone. The violinists, the servers, even the balloon arch disassembled and carted off before dawn. What remained was silence, and not the eerie kind either. This silence felt earned. I woke up early, as I always do, brewed my coffee with that old stovetop pot I've had since '83, sat by the window watching fog roll over the sound. It clung to the water like a memory refusing to lift. For the first time in weeks, I didn't hear Renata's blender in the kitchen. No turmeric smoothie, no oat milk requests, no Colby yelling at Alexa to play some upbeat morning playlist. Just me. And the quiet. I took a long walk down to the mailbox, a familiar rhythm. My knees cracked less than usual. I always think better when I walk. The leaves were starting to change, just a hint of gold in the treetops. I passed two neighbors, both of whom nodded and smiled. Not polite smiles, but the kind that hold recognition. "Good move yesterday," one of them said. I didn't ask how they knew. By the time I got back, there was a white envelope tucked into the storm door, HOA letterhead. I laughed out loud before even opening it. Violation banner placement and audio testing outside permitted hours. Fine, $38. I opened the drawer, found my checkbook and wrote the full amount, $38, neatly spelled out in blue ink, dropped it into the reply envelope, stuck a stamp in the corner. A small price for peace. Around noon, I received a message from Harrison. Contractor arrives Wednesday to begin measurements on the guest cottage. 1 bed, 1 study as discussed. Facing the water. I replied simply, "Sounds good. Add a skylight in the study. I like writing under natural light." I spent the rest of the day sorting. Not my things, those had been untouched, but sorting the emotional clutter. I emptied a drawer of sympathy cards from my wife's passing. Read every single one again. Some were kind, some were obligatory. But there was one from an old friend that struck me this time around. It said, "Grief doesn't mean closing doors. Sometimes it just means choosing which rooms you no longer let people walk through." That afternoon, I wired $3,000 to a local community college, the first semester tuition for an evening photography course. I had circled the course description in the brochure 2 months ago, then tucked it away when things got noisy. Now the noise was gone. That evening, I cooked dinner for one. Just a grilled cheese and tomato soup, sat on the back patio with a glass of wine. For dessert, I had a single square of dark chocolate, the kind my wife used to keep hidden from the grandkids. A couple houses down, someone was power washing their driveway. Ordinary sounds of ordinary life. But it no longer felt like I was watching from behind glass. I was inside my life again. Lila texted around 7. "Mom and Dad are packing. Tense. But quiet. I think they're scared of you now." I sent back one word. "Good." Then followed it up with another. "Not afraid. Just aware." She replied with a laughing emoji. Around 8, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh leather-bound notebook. Wrote the date at the top in clean cursive, Sunday, October 1st. First entry, silence is a language. And for the first time in years, I'm fluent again. Before bed, I opened the fireproof box once more, just to look. Inside, the revoked power of attorney, the codicil to my will, the trust documents for Lila and her brother, the certified deed transfer, the county clerk receipt, the next door post printed out for posterity, and finally the $38 HOA fine paid and photocopied, now a trophy rather than a penalty. I closed the box, locked it, slipped the key into a drawer beneath the coffee filters. Tomorrow the town assessor would come by to log the structural changes. By next spring my guest cottage would be ready. A one-bedroom place to rest and read with a writing desk by a wide window, a tea kettle humming softly in the background. No one would move me again. No one would erase what mattered. And if Colby ever came back hat in hand full of regret, I might open the door. Or I might not. Some boundaries aren't built to keep people out, but to remind them what they walked away from. That night I went to bed early. No ring pings, no whispers in the hallway, just the steady breath of the house settling into its new chapter. One where the locks had changed. And I held the only key. The thing about taking back control is, once you have it, you stop needing to prove it. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of birds instead of boots on hardwood. No stomping through the hall, no blender, no voices arguing over who ordered the wrong centerpiece. Just the sun filtering through the windows, slicing shadows across the floor like clock hands made of light. The calendar said October 3rd. That meant Colby and Renata had 27 days left. But I wasn't counting. They were already shrinking. You could feel it in how they moved around the house like guests who'd overstayed. Renata's voice, once sharp as vinegar, had turned brittle. Colby hadn't made eye contact in 2 days. They packed mostly at night now, lights on past midnight, cardboard scraping tile, whisper fighting behind closed doors. Let them. I didn't speak unless spoken to, not because I was angry, because I no longer owed them translation. That morning I sat on the patio with a pad of lined paper and wrote a letter longhand in the same pen my wife gave me for our 30th anniversary. I addressed it to Lila. Inside, I explained everything. Not just the legal pieces, though I included those, the codicil, the trust, the lifetime occupancy clause. I also explained the why. I told her what it meant to be erased politely, how some people use kindness like camouflage, and how you never owe loyalty to someone who treats your silence as surrender. I didn't preach. I just told the truth. I slipped the letter into a small leather folder, tucked it behind the trust copy, and left it on her desk upstairs. She would find it when they packed the last of her things. Later that afternoon, I went to the hardware store, bought a fresh set of locks. Harrison had already given me clearance to update the guest cottage access system, and since construction hadn't started yet, I figured I'd get ahead of things. The clerk asked if I wanted the smart lock model. No, I said. I want the kind with a key, something you have to turn. He nodded, understood completely. Back home, I watched from the upstairs window as the contractor marked out the foundation lines with orange paint. He looked up, gave me a thumbs up. I gave him one back. By dusk, I was sitting at my desk reviewing the HOA bulletin that had just arrived by mail. Monthly reminder, excessive outdoor lighting past 10 p.m. may incur a fine. I chuckled, clipped it into my file, right next to the $38 noise violation. Let them send 100 fines. I could frame them like postcards from a battle I'd already won. I ate a quiet dinner, roast chicken, buttered beans, 2 boiled potatoes, no chaos, no questions about organic versus non-organic, just food that tasted like food. And for dessert, 1 more square of dark chocolate. Simple victories. By 9:30 the house was dark except for the desk lamp in my study. I picked up the guest cottage blueprints, ran my fingers across the penciled outline for the skylight, and imagined the light that would fall there each morning. That would be my writing spot. No one would knock, no one would reposition the furniture. And when people came to visit, they'd knock at my door, not expect me to move out of theirs. Ownership isn't just paperwork. It's peace. It's the freedom to sit in your own silence and call it yours. That's what they never understood. That's what they never could. The next morning, I passed Colby on the stairs. He looked tired. His arms were full of shoeboxes. He didn't say anything. I didn't either. I didn't need to. My hands were empty. And yet I held everything.